So let's start talking about service design. Service design ensures that IT services are designed to meet the current and future needs of the business. And I should underline that there, the needs of the business, and focuses on technical architectures as well as processes, reporting, and related documentation. So another thing to underline here is as well as processes, reporting, and related documentation. I think that's often overlooked, but it's a critical part of the design of a service. 5 aspects of service design. So we've talked a little bit already about the service portfolio. So that's one of the aspects. How do we document and outline the service that we're providing? The actual solution itself. We have the technology and architecture that are going to support that service. And then processes and metrics. So what are the processes that support the service? What are the metrics that we hope to see when we're measuring the service? We want to know, is this a successful service? Is this service being provided efficiently and effectively? And the only way we can do that is if we have established metrics, whether they be performance metrics or output metrics, transaction metrics that we can use to measure a service. So the first aspect, the service portfolio. We already saw this this particular graphic. This in service design is where we really get more into the service catalog component. So in service strategy, we're focused more on the pipeline. You know, we have a particular strategy. We maybe have a number of different ideas about services we should provide. When we get into the design phase, it's where we're talking about, okay, these are the actual services that are in development that we've made decisions on and we're going forward with. So in the service catalog, you can see that through this service lifecycle, in the service portfolio, we're looking at the requirements, we're defining the service, we're providing analysis, we're providing approval for the service to go forward. So the approval is the signature. You've gotten sign-off. When we get into the service catalog, when the service is chartered, that means that a team has actually been formed now, and they're moving forward with the service design. They're doing the development, they're doing building, testing. It's being released, and that service is going to be operational. So those are the service phases that are encompassed by the service catalog. The customer should be able to have visibility into the service catalog, although I would say that for most organizations, they don't necessarily include a service in the catalog until the service is actually operational. But it is possible, depending on the maturity, again, of the organization, to have that visibility where they can see information about a particular service that is still in development. And they may have input then into that development. Certainly, there may be users who are involved in the testing of a particular service. So again, visibility may depend upon a person's role and the overall visibility strategy for the organization. After the catalog, we mentioned the service technology and architecture. So the technology, when we talk about the technology or the systems, a system is defined here as a number of related things that together achieve an overall objective. So an information system, for example. So you may have, we mentioned the Exchange server. That may be, there may be, that may be part of your overall system with a lot of components that go along with it. A business function might be a system, the whole organization. The architecture then is the structure that's behind it, behind that system or service, and the relationship. So when we talk about technology and architecture, we're starting to touch on configuration management, which is a process that we'll cover in the service transition phase of the life cycle. But you'll notice a lot of tie-ins among the processes and between the processes of various life cycles. So when we start talking about technology, systems, and architecture, and we talk about relationships, we're really talking about relationships between and among the configuration items, also abbreviated as CIs. So when we work on these implementations of IT service management tools, the CMDB, or the Configuration Management Database, can really be a core piece where we start to build this service catalog, and we can identify then the architecture underneath that service. So the CMDB can already be in play as early as the service design phase of the life cycle. Understanding the relationships between and among CIs and between the CIs and the services helps us to identify the impacts. So, for example, if we need to upgrade a particular service, or upgrade a particular server, how is that then going to impact the various services that depend on that particular server? Architecture, as we define it here, also includes standards and framework that guide the design and evolution of the system. So we may have particular standards for our database management systems or our server operating systems, and those are going to design or to guide the design of the systems that we have in place. So we may be a Linux shop, and that's going to drive to some extent the way we design our services. As we're designing the services, we start to develop what we call a service design package. The service design package should include the business requirements, which we obtain from the service strategy phase of the life cycle. It should include the actual design itself. We should include a readiness assessment, so if there's been any user acceptance testing or other review that needs to come into play here, and also a life cycle plan. What's our transition plan? How are we going to release this into the live environment? There's going to be a number of considerations. Again, we're stretching into the service transition phase of the life cycle, but we should have some base understanding at this point how those processes are going to support this either new or changed service that's going to be designed and put into operation within our infrastructure. And again, remember, when we talked about it before, the phases of the life cycle, the service design package is going to be the output to the service design phase of the life cycle. Additional processes that we work with in service design, service level management. So we don't wait until a system is already in operation before we define service levels for it. Service levels should be part of the original design of a service. Two things I tell my customers when they're looking at how to define service levels. First, we want to establish realistic targets before presenting to the business, so understand what your current capabilities are. And then obtain agreement from the business, so understand what the business's requirements are before you lay out your capabilities. So kind of it's forcing their hand first. So you may know from reporting that you're able to resolve most incidents within 24 hours. But depending on the relative urgency or business importance of a particular service, they may be satisfied with receiving a response within 2 days. Well, if you can get them to agree to providing a service level of 2 days, then that's certainly going to provide you additional bandwidth to work on other activities as opposed to going forward with assuming they're going to need 24-hour response time. service levels are supported by operational level agreements and underpinning contracts. So OLAs are the agreements that you have with Tier 2 and Tier 3 groups within your organization. Underpinning contracts is the support you get from external vendors. Make sure that when you're defining your service level agreements that, for example, if you are only expecting maybe a 2-hour response window for level 2 support, and your vendor has defined that they're going to provide support within or resolution within 24 hours, that you can't then expect to be able to provide a 1-hour service level agreement. You're going to have to make sure your service level agreement matches or is greater than the support levels that you're getting from your own team and from your external vendors. Supplier management, obtaining value for the cost of services. So it's been a more important topic lately. We find that through reporting, we can help to identify particular supplier, whether it be services or infrastructure. If you're having an issue, it's much more helpful to have this, the reporting capabilities, so you can go back and identify where there are issues and make sure that you are getting the services that you're paying for by being able to report and manage those services internally. So supplier management gives guidelines to customers for better managing the relationships that they have with their vendors. I mentioned that I would talk a little bit more about warranty and the components of service warranty. These are the components of service warranty. So when we are designing a service, we need to keep in mind continuity, capacity, availability, security. So all of those factor into providing good warranty and good value for the customer. Some of the additional principles, I want to be sure that we've got enough time for some additional questions, so I'm not going to read each of these individually, but there are other considerations for our service design. We want to be sure that we are in line and integrated really with the business and have their trust. Service-oriented architecture, so we want to be doing things as efficiently as possible when we are designing services. And service design models. I mentioned cloud first. There are a number of design models and sourcing options that an organization can adopt, which helps to guide the design and to make everything uniform and easier to maintain for IT. To recap, we've gone through the first 2 phases of the service lifecycle. I mentioned that continual service improvement does surround all of this. Plus, there is complementary guidance in a number of different forms. And we do have some additional resources beyond the 5 core books. There are thought leadership guidelines both on the RightStar and BMC websites, as well as from industry organizations with which we have partnered, including IT Service Management Forum. You can find that at itsmfusa.org, and Think HDI, that's for the formerly known as the Help Desk Institute, and that's their website.